Good evening to all, and we welcome you to today's session on life and abortion. And it's going to be a very exciting session because I think Norman and Debbie, who are the speakers for tonight, have a lot to tell us. And we just want to welcome and invite them to this session tonight. And so I'd like to now, without further ado, introduce our speakers for tonight, Pastor Norman and Debbie Ng. They've both co-founded the Heartbeat Project to shape a culture of life in response to the growing acceptance of abortion in Singapore. And before that, they spent over 10 years in the marketing industry, largely with top Fortune 500 companies. They are also mentors to marketplace leaders, creative professionals, and influencers. Through their leadership at 316 Church, they have challenged the status quo to shape culture through disruptive storytelling, short films, prophetic design, and digital strategy. Their films have reached over 50 countries and 5 million people to date. Now, we get to meet them in person, or rather virtually. So I'm going to hand over the time to Pastors Norman and Debbie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Evangeline. Thanks, Uncle Georgie. What a wonderful time to be here. Really appreciate everyone calling from all over the world. Appreciate you, even if you're calling from Singapore or Australia or some other countries. Thank you for taking time to be here today. To be part of this conversation that is not often spoken about. In fact, it bears an unpopular opinion many times. And so today we want to pray, and we believe that as we talk about this, the Lord is going to reveal His heart for us, to us, with regards to life and abortion. So let's start this time with a word of prayer, shall we? Father, we thank you for everyone that you have chosen to be here. It is a divine appointment. Lord, we believe that as we share your word and your heart when it comes to the issue of life and abortion, that Lord, in a moment like that, there will be actual lives that will be saved. That babies who might have been scheduled for abortion, Lord, you would save them, and you would raise champions who would be a voice for the voiceless. Lord, I also believe that through this, that people, men and women who are caught in sexual sin, perhaps, Lord, would start to realize the sanctity of life and the sacredness of sex. So, Father, we thank you. We ask for you to be with us and open our hearts, open our minds to what you have to say here. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Norman. This is my wife, Debbie. Okay. By way of quick introduction, Debbie and myself, well, we've been together for a long time. All right. We're in the same primary school, same secondary school, same junior college, same university. And now we are colleagues at 316 Church. We're pastors there. And at the same time, we also co-founded two social movements, as Evangeline spoke about earlier. The first one is called True Love Is. And it's a ministry that equips the church to become a safer place for people struggling with same-sex attraction. And through the stories that are told, through the sharings that are being made, it has reached 50 countries and 5 million people in terms of its touch points. Now, somewhere along the line, as we were busy with True Love Is, the champion for life in Singapore, her name is Jennifer Hain. She came to us, she reached out to us and said, would we consider speaking up about the issue of life in Singapore? Would we tell some stories about it? Would we go around speaking about it? And, you know, all along, I knew that abortion was an issue. My wife and I, we knew that it is a terrible tragedy that's happening all over the world. In Asia itself, there are about more than 25 million abortions that happen every single year. That's 4 times the size of Singapore disappearing every single year. But yet, there wasn't a lot of interest in this. In fact, this is a story of apathy, of repentance, because there was a lot of apathy involved. I didn't feel that we needed to take action, but I told Jennifer that, you know what, we will pray about it. We'll pray about it. And as we prayed about it, the Lord really moved. I was in the car, I was driving one day, I was listening to a sermon. It was Pastor Young who was speaking, Pastor Young of Cornerstone. And if you know, not many pastors would speak about abortion often. And even if you would, you don't do it every single week. But during that season, he spoke. And as he spoke, he said, he raised up the verse about Cain attacking Abel. And the verse in Genesis 4 that says, listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And as I heard that, I almost got the sensing that there was a crying out from the ground from the voices who had no voice, from the babies who had been aborted. But there is a better word. There is a blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. And that is the blood of Christ. And in that moment, I just got the sense that there must be a voice to be able to speak up for the most vulnerable amongst us, the ones who have no voice to defend themselves. And these were the unborn. At that point in time, I realized that there was a voice that must come true to speak forth for those who might have had an abortion before and who have been struggling with guilt and shame, but have never found a breakthrough since that one moment in time. And also that there is a need for young people in our nation and within the church to be discipled in the area of life. And even in the simple poll that you saw earlier, you would see that almost half says that abortion is acceptable in some situations. And we're going to dig into the biblical worldview for that in a little bit on, all right? But as I continue to pray about it, the story goes, and I'm sharing this story because perhaps through this testimony and through the truths revealed into our lives, that perhaps this would move you too. And during that season, we were continuing to pray about the matter. And I was part of a conference called Kingdom Invasion Kids. And every year during this conference, it would be the purest expression and encounter of the Holy Spirit I would experience. And I would see children weeping and crying as they encountered God. They would be so hungry for the presence of God. They would be so hungry for truth and grace. They would lay prostrate on the ground for hours. They would be crying, and at the end of it, you would see tears on the wooden floor. And I would say, whatever they have, God, I want that too. In that year, on the third day of that conference, it came lunchtime, but the children didn't leave the altar. The speaker asked children, it's lunchtime, would you like to go and eat? And you know, Debbie and I, we are parents of 3 kids, young children. And when it's lunchtime, they go wow. But in that moment, the children just kept weeping and crying. And the speaker knew that the Lord was moving. And he said to us, pastors and leaders, I need you to stop doing whatever you're doing now and come to the stage and come to the front because there's something for you to receive here. And so one by one, the speakers and the pastors, we went on stage, and the children would lay their hands upon us. And you would see the pastors break down in tears as they received the revelation from the Lord. And I felt that, okay, I'm going to go. And I'm going to see how the Lord would move. And so I went up, I took the knee, and 3 children laid their hands on me, but they didn't cry. And I was wondering what was going on, Lord. Why is everybody crying, but these 3 children who are putting their hands, why are they not crying? And I felt the Holy Spirit say to my heart, even as I was seeking and meditating on this over the last season, and it says, son, I'm letting you hear the voice of the children who cannot cry. The voice of the children who have been aborted, and hence they don't have a voice to cry. And when I received that revelation, the 3 children in front of me started to weep, and I started to weep. And I felt, Lord, thank you, because that's the revelation. You see, I struggle with a sense of self-centeredness. I may not struggle with deep sexual sins, but I struggle with a sense of self-centeredness. Many years, we've been in the marketplace for many years. Materialism got a hold on us. Greed got a hold on us. But in that moment, the Lord knew that in my heart, we've always wanted to live a life of purpose. And here he's saying, son, speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. Speak up for those who don't have a voice. And in that moment, we committed that we would start something. The end result of that, in a couple of months later, was the Heartbeat Project, where we would tell stories and share and equip on what the biblical worldview on life is. And today, these stories of life have reached about 1 million people, and it has been seen over 500,000 times. And we've gotten testimonies of people who have been blessed and encouraged in their journey with unplanned pregnancies. And we've seen even children in need find homes through what God has been doing through this movement. And so that's my part of the story. But I wouldn't have been able to do this if not for the Lord revealing a second part of the revelation to my wife, Debbie, and I'll leave her to tell her story to you.
Hi everyone, it's just a privilege to be here, a privilege to speak to all of you, especially on a topic that is often forgotten or often steeped in so much shame, often steeped in so much guilt that very, very few people speak about this. So I just want to first of all, give you a big thank you for joining us for this session and for kind of staying along with us and journeying along with us for the next hour plus. So my story really started from this place. This is a playground in Israel. This was in 2018 when we were in Israel, Norm and I, together with our church. And we visited this place, which was basically a neighborhood, just like any other neighborhood that you would see in Singapore. Long story short is we went to this place because the tour guide was bringing us there, said, hey, you know, we just built this bomb shelter. Would you like to come and see it? It's in this house. So all of us went. And imagine with me, it's like a semi-detached or a bungalow kind of a house. And the moment we stepped into the gate, the Lord met with me there. It was as clear as day. It was daytime. This was a picture taken right after. The moment I stepped into that place, I started to weep and I started to cry. And I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know, nothing on abortion was on my heart. I was there basically to see a bomb shelter. But as everybody was going down to the bomb shelter, it was downstairs, I just found myself frozen. I couldn't go down and I was weeping and weeping. I realized that, next to me was a window and this window was at the side of the house. So while everybody went down, what I did was I actually went to get a chair and I climbed up the chair and I looked into the house. And when I looked into the house, I realized, hey, this is a kindergarten. There were like 3-4-year-old kids inside. And then I found out that, every single week, the children would actually have some lessons in the bomb shelter. They all go down the bomb shelter and they have lessons there for, half a day so that they are simulated to the environment of a bomb shelter. So that in the event that a bomb comes, they will not be scared because the bomb shelter is small, it's tight, there are no windows and so on and so forth. And as I heard about this and I was looking at the children, the Lord just met with me at that moment. And I kept on saying aloud, and I said, Lord, how can this be? Why is there a bomb shelter in the school? I drop my kids to school every day, knowing that it's a safe place. But the fact that there is a bomb shelter, it simply means that this place is a potential of being bombed. Yes, it's to keep the children safe, but it also means that people are actually targeting this school, and that's why they need to keep it safe. And, I was weeping and I didn't know what it was. I just journaled everything down and I left Israel. For the next 1 year, then I was still working in my marketing job. I was then in MNC, was there for the last 9 years. And, I felt the Lord stirring my heart that I had to leave and do something, but I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I thought I was going to be a childcare teacher. I went to Google, I went to find out, what can I do? And lo and behold, when our youngest child was born, that's when the Lord spoke to me. And one night the Lord just asked me as I was putting my youngest to bed, and he asked me, do you remember what I told you in Israel? And I said, yes, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? And he said, what did I tell you then? And so I repeated the whole story to God. And he gave me this very simple one phrase. He said, that place that I showed you, what is that place? And I said, I don't know, it's Israel. And he showed me, no, the safest place that you could ever think of is also the most dangerous place, because that is exactly what the Lord showed me in Israel. He said, how can it be? How can it be? This place is supposed to be safe. And the Lord showed me the most safest place is also the most dangerous place. And that exactly is the mother's womb. It is where life can be taken away in what God had designed to be the safest place. God had designed the womb to be the safest place for a child. But yet in this place, life can just be taken away like that. And I was so convicted by the Lord. And I said, Lord, whatever you ask me to do, I will do it. I will do it. But then I was still working at that time. And we didn't know if I was supposed to leave my job. I was taking my maternity leave, and I told the Lord, and we told the Lord, we prayed and we said, God, if this is really your will, then you show it to us, because how can we, go into this thing not really knowing whether or not this is what we're called to do. And one fine day, just a week before I was going to tell my boss that I was going to take an extended maternity leave to seek the Lord really on his heart for the matter. And we said, Lord, financially, if I leave my job, how are we going to survive? We have a newborn, we have a family of 5, we have 3 children. How are we going to survive? And one day, this lady just came up to us, asked to meet up. I've never met with her before. She gave us this check and she said, this money is yours. The Lord has said that you are to start the work of life, and this is a seed fund for you to start. And I kid you not, to the very last dollar of this $10,000 check was the finances that we were lacking if I were to continue taking my extended maternity leave. And we know then the Lord said, you know, you have to do this work. And so I left my job, and then we started the Heartbeat Project in 2019. And really, I want to just share very quickly, you know, many times, and many of us are in a marketplace, and there's nothing wrong being in the marketplace. And we were in the marketplace for a long time. But the question I want to leave with you, even with our testimony, is what is your higher purpose? Your highest purpose is not your skill set. Our skill sets for marketing, but that is not the higher purpose that God has called us. He has equipped us with storytelling. He has equipped us with creativity. He has equipped us with marketing skills to do what God wants us to do. It's not what we're good at doing. It's why God has equipped us with those skills, and what are we going to do with it. If you're a teacher here today, if you're a photographer, you know, if you're an educator, if you're an engineer, if you're in whatever you may be, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, God has given you these skill sets for a purpose. It is not just the career that you're holding or the profession you're holding, but I encourage you to seek the Lord. Why has He given you the skills to be a lawyer or a doctor or an educator? And you will find out that is what the higher purpose the Lord has called you to do. And with that, you know, we started the Heartbeat Project. We will share more about it in the slides to come. But essentially, a very quick one, the Heartbeat Project seeks to shape a culture of life in Singapore, but especially amongst the church as well. And as we started the work, though the Lord had laid on our hearts the issue of abortion, we also realized, as the Lord showed us, it is not a pro-birth conversation. Many times in the US, for example, is my rights versus baby right, women's rights versus child's rights, right? So it's left versus right. But no, the Lord showed us it is really everybody's lives are equally important. It's not baby's life versus mother's life. And with that, we're not here to start a pro-birth conversation. We're here to start a pro-life work. It is for life. Right? And so what do? We support a culture of life with 5 pillars: supporting unplanned pregnancies, single moms, fostering and adoption, children with special needs, children who are in need, and really the advocacy of children for the right to life. And we'll touch on each one in a bit. But before that, we're just going to take a very quick quiz, and we're going to get into a bit of fun.
So the 5 pillars answers one of the top questions in Slido already, which asks what are the alternatives to abortion. And so these 5 pillars covers the support that the church can give from cradle to grave and from the womb to the tomb. And if we want to have a measure of moral authority here, where we are not just pro-birth, we are truly pro-life, then here's where the church can come in to play our part. Because when we talk about this conversation, remember, this is not just a political issue. It is a pastoral one. When our children and when Christians are saying that abortion is acceptable, what they're saying is that thou shalt not kill is very different from thou shalt not abort. And there must be a reason why. And so it's not just a political matter, it is a pastoral one. It is not just a governmental matter, it is a gospel one. You see, the Bible says that the law is like a tutor. And in Singapore, the abortion law has been legal for 51 years. And when I meet many young people and I talk to them about this, what I realize is that they feel that abortion is acceptable. Because if the law says so, and the church is not saying anything against it, then surely abortion must be okay. And so this is what happens when the law, which is a tutor, orientates the conscience of a nation towards what is immoral. Right? What are some of these facts and stats? And so Debbie's going to take you through the situation in Singapore, which while you might think would be conservative, fairly conservative to the rest of the world, I would say it's fairly representative on the global average. Debs.
Okay, so just now we took the quiz to kind of find out how much you guys actually know about the facts and stats of abortion in Singapore. And I just want to give you a contrast. We are in a COVID-19 pandemic, and to date, about 3.8 million people have died globally due to the global pandemic. But do you know that we have 40 to 50 million abortions globally every year? If you think the pandemic is bad, guys, we have a bigger pandemic that has been happening around the world. These numbers are from the WHO, so they are clearly verified, 40 to 50 million and 25 million in Asia alone. All right, I want to just let you sink in what the magnitude of abortion is around the world and in Asia. In Singapore, there are about 6,800 abortions in 2017. And according to the MOH, the Ministry of Health, guess what? The principal, sorry, it should be cases, the principal causes of death in 2017 were cancer, pneumonia, and heart diseases. None of them come close to how many abortions there are. While they report that cancer has 6,083 as the first number of death, actually abortion is higher than that. So abortion, the deaths by abortion actually is the #1 cause of death in Singapore. One abortion happens every 90 minutes. Now, many times we think that, oh, but you know, abortions are maybe done by teenage pregnancy, our young people, they are not very responsible. But guess what, guys? 94% of abortions are done by adults. Okay, 53% are done by marrieds, and half of them already have children. The #1 reason for abortion is because someone is single, but within the marriage, enough children is the #1 reason. That means they are already parents, right? They have gone through a pregnancy before. They are parents, but they can say, but they are saying that, you know, I have enough children, one more will be a burden, and therefore I am not going to keep this child. So I want to first of all debunk a myth that if you think that abortion in Singapore is because they are done by the people who are younger in that sense, the under 20s, well, guess what? They're only 6%. Yeah, the rest of the 94% is done by 20 and above, with the bulk being in the age range of 20 to 40 years old. Next up, Singapore is 1 out of 7 most liberal in the world on our abortion laws. We allow abortion up to 24 weeks legal. Okay, so in most countries, you will either need 1, a good reason for an abortion, and 2, you might only have abortion allowed up to first trimester, which is 12 weeks. But Singapore, we are 1 out of 7 most liberal in our abortion laws that allow past 5 months of pregnancy. At 24 weeks, you know what? All the major organs of a baby are formed. Baby's eyes and nose are developed. Fingerprints are formed. Baby kicks and turns inside the womb. Baby is actively hiccuping, yawning, swallowing, can hear your voice. Essentially, the baby is an entire human being, okay? But here we are saying abortion is okay. Earlier, we asked the question, is parental consent needed for someone under 16? No, it is not required in Singapore. It might be appalling to all of you or most of you, but guess what? That is the situation here. Under the age of 21, a young person cannot vote, cannot get married without parental consent. Under 19, you cannot buy cigarettes. Under 18, you cannot consume alcohol. Under 16, you cannot give consent to sex. But you can have an abortion. You do not need parental consent. And this is a big alarm bell for our young people. For anyone who is in contact with a young person, we need to care for the younger generation. What is this signaling? If the church is not talking about this, if we do not embrace this as a discipleship, pastoral issue, we cannot wait for the laws to govern the morality of the land, because Singapore is extremely liberal in our laws as well. A report in the Straits Times says that teenagers are starting to have sex at a younger age. You know, the social workers are saying now they become sexually active as young as 12 or 13 years old, compared to 15 or 16-year-old a decade ago. So as the youths are getting younger and younger in their experiment of sex, we need to really bring this up as a pastoral and discipleship matter. An IPS survey was done in 2019 by the Institute of Public Policies in Singapore, and they had asked the question on abortion: is abortion actually acceptable if a family has low income? This was the results that came out. 48.3% said that abortion is acceptable if the family has very low income. Okay, so this is the general statistics that they had from the entire population that was interviewed. They further cut this question into religion and also by demographics. And guess what? If you think 48.3% is actually high, 33.3, so 1 out of 3 Christians aged 18 to 35 say abortion is not wrong at all. So it's an extreme of the scale, okay? It's not even like maybe wrong. It is not wrong at all. 1 out of 3. Another 1 out of 3 say that it is only wrong sometime, which brings us to 2 out of 3 Christians aged 18 to 35 who say abortion is either not wrong at all or only wrong sometimes. Essentially, this is exactly like what Norm said earlier. Our young people, Christians, are saying that thou shalt not kill is not the same as thou shalt not abort. There are exceptions or for whatever reason. And the question we should ask ourselves, are we going to wait until it is 3 out of 3 before we as a body of Christ will say we want to speak about this matter, before we as a body of Christ say we want to disciple our young people on this matter, and not just the young, but across the generations? And I want to put forth to you that clearly we need to have a reality check, guys. We are witnessing a departure of the biblical understanding of sex and the sanctity of life, especially among the young people today. And the question really is, what are we teaching the young people, or what are the young people being exposed today? Because really the ideologies are getting more and more liberal out there, and we need to, again, I want to re-emphasize, this is a pastoral matter, because the young people can go to Google, the young people can go to their friends, or actually anybody in any generation, right? Earlier we did the poll, and many of you, I think half of you said that abortion is acceptable to some extent, or for whatever reasons it is acceptable. And we want to understand really what is the biblical worldview that is not just for the young, but for every person who says that you are a Christian.
And so at this point, let's look into the biblical worldview of what the Bible says about life and abortion, all right? In this segment, and later even in the Q&A as well, we want to answer some tough questions. Should Christians accept abortion? What if it's in the case of rape? What if it's in the case of a medical complication and the child and the family will suffer? Should Christians accept abortion then? Also, what is your responsibility when it comes to abortion? We might not have anything to do with the act, but do we have a responsibility when it comes to that? What if the churches continue to stay silent on the issue of life? Or what is the impact of the abortion law that we spoke about a little bit earlier? And also, is abortion a political or a discipleship matter? And so we've been talking a little bit about this. And let's go a little bit into what the Bible says. And you know what? It starts at this place. What does the Bible have to say about the sanctity of life? And so in Genesis, it says that God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Now God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. And so what you see here is that God created mankind in his image. That we are created in the sacred image of God. And one of the revelations we received is that, see, the enemy wants to do violence to God. But because he cannot touch our God, because the difference between them is far too great, he strikes at the image of God. He strikes at the unborn, that the image of God will not be multiplied on this earth. Now, what we see here is that every child is created in the sacred image of our holy God. And in Genesis 9, he says, whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made mankind. And that is the reckoning that comes for the loss of every child. And also in 1 Corinthians, don't he says, the Apostle Paul writes, don't you know that you yourself are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person, for God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple. And so what we see here is that the human body is the dwelling place of God. It is like the Ark of the Covenant carrying the image of God. It is holy, it is sacred, and that is where we find the value of the sanctity of life. But as we move a little bit on, and when we look at Jeremiah and we look at the question, when does life begin? Most of you got this right just now when you said that life begins before conception. Many will say that life begins at conception. Well, biologically, that's what we see. We see the scans, we see the heartbeat, we see the physical development of the fetus. Biologically, perhaps it begins in the womb. But here what we see in Jeremiah 1, then the word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And then he says, before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations. And so you see here, the Lord doing a work of sanctification within the womb, a holy work of God. But yet before he formed Jeremiah and all of us, he knew us. And so from a spiritual perspective, he knew our spirit before we were born. We were birthed in the imagination of God. We were birthed in the heart of the Father, filled with dreams and good works that he ordained for us to do before the beginning of time. And then in the womb, that sacred work of life is being revealed, as you would see in Psalm 139. And it says, for you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. This verse tells us that the formation of life in the womb is the work of God. And it's not just a mechanical process, but it takes on the analogy of weaving and knitting, a workmanship, a craftsmanship. The life of the unborn is the knitting of God. And what he is knitting is a human being in his own image, unlike any other creature in the universe. This is really reinforced in Ephesians 2:10 that says we are his workmanship. Workmanship, poema, workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them, just like he prepared for Jeremiah that he would walk in them. But let me give you a little bit more when it comes to how we value life in the perspective of the sanctity of life. And that's found in the book of Job. And in Job 31, it says, if I have denied justice to any of my servants, whether male or female, whether they had a grievance against me, what will I do when God confronts me? What will I answer when called to account? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one form us both within our mother? And so in those days, the culture is such that many people treated their slaves like they were property. They treated them not like humans. But Job here is saying that if he treated his servants any less than a human equal, then he is in the wrong. And why is that so? Because the value accorded to a person is not in whether they were born a slave or whether they were born free, but the value of how God created a person within our mother's womb. Job accorded and recognized the holy work of God that happens within the womb. And so what we see here is that when there is an abortion that takes place, it is a direct assault on the work of God that happens within the womb. Conception and the development of the fetus that reveals God's handiwork. When an abortion takes place, it is bringing violence to that creation of the image of God. And I would like to say that we as believers, we as Christians, we have a role and responsibility to speak up for the voiceless. It is our responsibility to care for the poor, the vulnerable, and the oppressed. And there is few. I can't think of anyone more vulnerable than a pre-born child who cannot defend himself or herself. You know, Debbie and I have 3 wonderful children. But some years back, before number 2 was born that you see here, you see from left to right is Joshua, Kate, and Ben. Before Ben came, we actually went through a miscarriage. And it was the most difficult thing that we had to go through. It was the most painful thing. Debbie and I grieved a long time. And, you know, we didn't have this theology. We didn't have this understanding on the biblical worldview of life back then. But knowing what we know now, knowing that life began in the heart of the Father and in the imagination of God, and knowing that life started before conception, and conception merely revealed what God has already prepared. I get the sense that one day in heaven, we will have 4 children, and we would see the 4th one. And so actually recently we gave a name to number 4. And I got a sense in my heart that number 4, the original number 2 was a girl, and we named her Hope. And we knew that immediately after Hope that the Lord would give a child of restoration. And that's why our number 2 right now, his name is Benjamin. Benjamin is son of blessing, son of restoration. And that's why, and I really believe that we have 4. And so in that perspective of life, what is our role? Well, I want to tell you what God told Jeremiah as well. Because after God told Jeremiah the sacredness in which he was formed, the Lord told him in verse 8, do not be afraid of their faces, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said to me, behold, I have put my words in your mouth. See, I have this day set you over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root out and to pull down, to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant. You know, the work of life and the issue of abortion is not a popular topic. In fact, to say that you are pro-life, it's an unpopular opinion. You need to cash in social capital. If you're a pastor in a church, if you're a leader in the church, you might even face much opposition within your congregation. But I sense the word of the Lord here is saying, do not be afraid of their faces, for he is with us to deliver us. And as we speak on this matter, because truly it might not seem like much because it's so accepted this day, but every child is alive, made in the holy image of God, and he's called us to be a voice for the voiceless. And as we speak about it, he has set us this day over the nations and over the kingdoms to root out and to pull down, to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant. The question is, will we do that? And it starts first at a personal level. And so right now, we actually want to do something new. And perhaps in a webinar like that, you guys have not done this a lot, but now there are 105 of you. But instead of just allowing this to be a simple monologue on one side, we want to give you an opportunity to exercise your spiritual authority in this matter. I don't want you to despise what God could do in this little moment. Because now in this little case study, later when the admin teams break you up into your breakout rooms, the facilitator there is going to give you a case study, and that's this. Your cell group friend, yes, your cell group friend has just told you she's pregnant, and she has decided to abort. Now, this couple, they're married, and they already have 3 children, and they want to abort. Maybe you are here and you are saying, but Pastor, they're married, they show okay one. But you saw the stats and facts that Debbie presented just now. Most of the abortions happen on married couples. And I'm telling you, in our line of work, we've seen many Christian couples opt for this as well. And here in this case study, that's the situation. The husband does not want the child, and financially, it's tough. The question is, how will you respond to her? Now, your team leader in the breakout rooms, they're going to act as the pregnant friend, okay? If your team leader is a man, please don't mind us, okay? We don't have enough manpower, right? Just go along with it for a bit.
And if you feel that, oh, but financially it's very tough, then just borrow money from the bank. I want to throw in another point. If your group feels financial issues are not a big issue, then throw in another case. What if it's financially tough and the child has a medical condition that has been detected while in the womb? What would you respond? And really the scenarios can just add on and add on and add on.
All right, you have 10 minutes to do this. And again, I really sense the weight of the matter right now, where some of you are going to see and experience your spiritual authority to save lives here, all right? So admin team, please break them out into your breakout rooms, and facilitators, please take over there. And everyone, I hope you participate and see and catch a glimpse of how God can use you to save a life, all right? and we'll come back and we'll carry on after this. Admin team, go ahead. Wow, guys, welcome back, everybody. Okay, that was intense, man. My room was intense, but we got some great counsel. I never knew my wife was an award-winning actress, but wow, it was a wonderful time. I believe that you had a very informative and revelationary session as well.
I think if anything, I hope you realize that it's not so easy just asking someone, keep the baby, the baby is safe, keep the baby. It's really not easy, and there are many differing points of view as well. And it's not easy to walk this conversation.
I want to encourage you one thing though. We didn't get to share this, we won't get a chance to share this story later. We'll put the link for this couple's story in the chat box. But what happened was that Sarah found herself pregnant at 18 years old. She has already applied to an Ivy League college in the US, but she found herself pregnant. And what happened was her best friend was with her when she took the pregnancy test kit. And the best friend turned to her and said, "You are going to make a great mother." And that principle of first mention shaped her perspective completely. And the Lord brought her to a doctor. And you know, many doctors in Singapore, even Christian ones, are very quick to offer abortion as an option. But this doctor looked at Sarah and said, "Who's the father? Get married lah." Then at that moment, Sarah's eyes opened and said, "Wait a minute, I can get married to Mark." And you know what? From that moment on, they fought for the life of the child. Through other relatives, through other loved ones, they fought for the life of the child, and they are a happily married family right now. And Inez is 13 years old, and they're having they're wonderful family, all right? And so, well, right now, we want for you to hear from someone who went through an abortion.
Yeah, so even as we shared a lot about keeping the child, we shared a lot about how to help someone who is in an unplanned pregnancy. We also want to acknowledge that there are many who have had an abortion. And earlier when we took the poll, I think about 40% of you said that you actually know someone who's gone through an abortion. And really the work of the Heartbeat Project is not to guilt and bring shame to anyone who has had an abortion. Whatever has been done, we want to bring healing and restoration. We want to really bring that conversation between the person, and it could be the father of the child or the mother of the child who went through an abortion, and really just a reconciliation forgiveness and healing process with the Lord. We're not here to judge. We're not here to shame. We're not here to condemn. And it has been such a privilege walking with women who have had abortions before. I've heard many, many stories and how the Lord has met with each one. Many of them, if you ask them, it is a decision that they regret, but it's also something that they have seen the Lord's grace and his healing hands upon them as they walk through this journey. It is my absolute privilege to introduce a friend of mine. Her name is June. You can see her on screen. June is a champion. She is an amazing woman. She started the Buttons Project Singapore, and we'll share with it in a bit as well. But I want you to hear June's testimony on how June went through an abortion and what the Lord really used her story for. So I'm going to take this time, and June, you can take it away.
All right, thanks, Debbie. So I'd like to start by asking a question. So have you ever felt a pain so deep and dark, as if someone forcefully took your gut out beyond your will, wrung it as if squeezing dry a wet cloth, and the only way the pain found its expression was in the form of tears every single night for 1.5 years? You put on a smile when you're with your friends, yet you felt like you could just crumble to pieces on the inside anytime. You wished someone knew the depth of your pain, yet you were afraid of being exposed at the same time. I have, and this is my story. So when I was in university, I dated my future husband, or so I thought. He got into a management associate program after graduation, and his career looked set. I worked in a bank and I was getting paid pretty well. His parents loved me a lot, and our future looked so bright and promising that I could see us walking through life together, hand in hand, with our boy sitting on his shoulders, laughing. I had painted such a beautiful, fictitious picture of our future together that I had ignored many red flags, naively thinking that these red flags would miraculously disappear one day. And that day came, but it was not as I had expected. I had missed my period. So when the pregnancy test kit confirmed that I was pregnant, there was a look of fear in his eyes. I had never seen such fear before. So he looked at me and said, "I cannot afford to have a child now." And I knew what he meant. His career was right on track, ready to take off to a new height. And he was not ready to allow anything to threaten it, not even our baby. On my part, I was scared too. What if I chose to keep our child? Would he leave me? Would I become a single mother? I didn't want my child to grow up without a father. And when my parents kill me, how would my family and friends think of me? So these fears and worries overwhelmed me. Eventually, I decided to go along with his suggestion, thinking that life would go back to normal after the abortion and that I could live as if nothing happened. And how wrong was I to think that way? Reality hit me real hard after the abortion. What did I just do? I just kept asking myself repeatedly. Deep down, I knew I had just killed my own child. And the emotional pain and trauma that hit me after the abortion was something that I was not prepared for. No one had warned me that the pain was going to be that intense. The fictitious picture that I had painted in my mind of me being a good wife to him, being the best mother I can ever be to my children, watch them grow up, teach them ABC, and watch them take their first steps. It was strapped to pieces. And overnight, I saw myself as the worst mother ever. When I was supposed to protect and love my child, I did the very opposite. I chose to take away his life. Guilt and self-condemnation overwhelmed me. I was trapped in shame. I couldn't tell anyone about the pain I was going through. And I missed my child. I really did. Yet I felt that I had no right to grieve over the loss of my child because I had intentionally chosen abortion. You know, where is he? Is he angry at me? Will he ever forgive me? How would he have looked like? So these were the thoughts that were constantly in my mind. And Mother's Day was especially hard for me. God created women to be mothers. You know, we have wombs to carry our babies and be mothers to our children. And abortion defies the very thing I was created to be. Abortion broke me as a woman. It broke me as a mother. Needless to say, our relationship ended shortly after the abortion. The red flags finally found their rightful place in my mind. I was forced to recognize them. I cried myself to sleep every night for 1.5 years before I realized that only God's hand was long enough to pull me out of the dark pit that I was in. He heard my cries and he was merciful to me. So one day at a healing retreat, I saw a vision of Jesus, and he was carrying my child in his arms as he walked towards me. And Jesus was smiling, my child was happily wriggling in his arms. And Jesus just placed my child on my lap. And in that moment, I felt connected to my child, a connection that I never felt before. You see, an abortion happened very fast. Within 1 week of finding out that I was pregnant, I had the abortion. And in that vision, I knew that my child was safe in the arms of Jesus and that he was happy. And in that, I felt that I could finally forgive myself and let go of all my regrets. It was a closure that I very much needed. What is the purpose of my unborn child's life? One day I asked the Lord, and his reply came almost instantaneously. And he said, use your unborn child's life to propel the gospel forward. And my response was just, who am I, Lord, that you would use me, the greatest sinner on earth, and the very mistake that I made, that you use it to advance your kingdom. I felt so undeserving, yet that is how redemptive his love is for me. So it has been 4 years since I started Buttons Project Singapore to provide a safe space for people affected by abortion to grieve over the loss of their babies that they have not met. We create a memorial to remember, to grieve, and to love. Each button represents an aborted baby. And we also have a healing program for those who are ready to seek healing. So if you have had an abortion, just want you to know that there is no condemnation in Christ Jesus. His blood was shed on Calvary. He has washed us clean, and he is so close to the brokenhearted that he longs to bring healing to you. So if you have never shared with anyone about the abortion before, we'd just like to encourage you to bring to light what was done in darkness so that the enemy cannot have a hold on you. And it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you.
Hey, can we give June a big hand for being so courageous to share her story? Abortion is still largely a topic that has a lot of shame surrounding it. But June represents a tribe, and she wants to give voice, and through her testimony, may others find that breakthrough as well. You see, the post-abortive community, it's a big group. A couple of years back at Day of His Power, and this was a picture in Suntec City, on the 50th year since the passing of the abortion bill, we had a session where we got a chance to pray about this as a church of Singapore. Jason was there and Jennifer was there, and they were praying a prayer of repentance. And in that moment, as we were hosting the Lord's presence, we went there and we were led to ask for those who have had an abortion before to come forward to be prayed for. And even as we were praying about that, I felt I told the Lord, who would come forward? It's such a shameful topic. It's so difficult for them. But as we were obedient to what the Lord placed in our heart and we made that invitation, we saw hundreds of people make their way forward to the front of the stage. And in that moment, the Church of Singapore was able to sing over them, that they would know that therefore now there is no more condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And if you're here today and you need to know that, we want you to know that. And we hope that you will reach out to somebody like June, who runs Buttons that would help someone process the grief and trauma of an abortion.
The earlier statistics that we show are about almost 7,000 abortions in Singapore. In the 80s, the number was easily 3 to 4 times what it is today. Because over in the 80s, there was a Stop at 2 campaign. Many of you who might be in that generation, you will know of that campaign. And so, the abortion, I've spoken to a lady and she kept her abortion silent for 30 years. And the Lord really met with her, and the Lord said, you know, you need to think about this after 30 years. And I think now she's something like in her 50s or so. And the Lord still met with her, and she went through a whole run of healing and restoration. So it's never too late, right, to meet with the Lord again and close this chapter or heal from this chapter that you have gone through.
And now to wrap up, and then we go into Q&A. I want to answer maybe the first question from the Slido, all right? One of the questions says that, but the abortion situation is such a real situation. The lifetime commitments are immense. Well, I want to answer this question as we wrap up to tell you that in order for the church, see, the Church of Singapore wants to see a nation without abortion. But if the nation wants to respond, the nation needs to see the answer for children in need, and unplanned pregnancies come from the church. And there are 5 ways in which we as a church can represent the sanctity of life. These 5, okay? Number 1, we need to be able to support women in unplanned pregnancies, all right? And here we see it, Jennifer Heng, who is a champion for life, running Safe Place, which is a facility that houses women, some of them kicked out of their homes because they chose to keep their baby. And we as a church, every church needs to have a safe place.
So supporting women with unsupported pregnancies is a huge one. They can be staying in their home. They can be coming to stay at the organization and the respite care that Jennifer runs. Essentially, you don't come to us, we can also go to you. So what we do is we partner with Jennifer and her entire team to make sure that anybody who is in unsupported pregnancy gets the support they require, regardless of whether they're kicked out, medical situation, husband wants to leave them, boyfriend runs away, it doesn't matter. They will get the support that they need as long as they're willing to start that conversation. Okay, so the second part of it is really also supporting single moms, which is another point that Jennifer also works to. So many of these women sometimes are single, they're not married, and so Jennifer works with them as well. We also work with other community groups who house single moms, right, and their children, and they open their homes, they take them in, they journey with them, they walk with them, they, you know, the extra care that the community comes along and bring for the children. And so we partner. Again, the point that we're making is we're not here to say pro-birth, right? We're here to say pro-life, that we will have solutions and support for life.
The next thing is the normalization of fostering and adoption in our churches. God is a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows who sets the lonely in families. His heart beats for them. He identifies with them. He identifies himself so many times as one who cares for the orphans and the widows. But here, to be honest, in our churches, most don't know the difference between fostering and adoption. And that's where it must change. Over the weekend, we were able to host an info session on what fostering is about. We had almost 80 people turn up. And out from that 80, from 100 over churches, or 50 churches, 15 people say they want to foster. That is 15 children who might get a home because the church is willing to help. Now, there is another session happening on Thursday, 17th of June. If you want to find out about fostering, please scan the QR code and join us there. It's not too late, all right?
It is our dream, really, if we can see in every church, in every children's ministry, to have a foster child, to have a child in need, to have a special needs child, to have in our women's ministry a single mom, someone that we can reach out to in the community. We've also started as part of Heartbeat Project, besides the 100 Homes work, which is the fostering work that we're doing, we've also started one child at a time. Essentially, it is as simple as this. You can't take a child in, you can go to a child. If a child can't come into your house, you can go into their house. And so here we have 5 children. These are real children that we have partnered with fostering agencies to identify. And these are children on the brink of being into a fostering case. Many of them live with their kin carers. That means they live with a grandma and an auntie who has like 2 or 3 other children to take care of. And we've just put this and started this about 3 months ago. And guess what? The Lord is showing us that really there's people who want to care. Jasmine, who's 20-year-old, she's aging out of foster care. Next year when she turns 21, she's getting into university. She needs some financial help and she needs a mentorship. We shared this with the church, and lo and behold, someone stepped forward and says, I'm willing to mentor Jasmine. She's a lecturer in a polytechnic, and she said, I'll do it. and they just met up. And a relationship has now been formed, a friendship has been formed, and things have already started. And so this is really the Lord showing us, as a community, as a church, come forward and say, hey, you know what? We will care for your child. You are in need. Don't worry. We will care for your child. Earlier, we gave you the case study. What if someone who needs financial support? We will care for your child. Everyone comes together. We can really do so much more.
That is the heart of the church. And if nobody cares, we want to care. And so often the church is known for what we are against. But in John 13, Jesus said, by this will all men know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Not be known for our services, but be known for how we serve one another in love. And a group that we must serve is the children with special needs and their families. About 2 years ago, we ran a kingdom-wide family day called Life Fest. And part of that, we held a Spartan race for children with special needs. And here in the final stage of that race, it was a 3-meter high jump. And many children would be fearless. They would jump off with no reservations. I myself stood down there for 40 seconds before I was willing to take the leap. But we saw many youths, children with special needs, and they would stand there for a long time, and they wouldn't be able to jump as freely because they were not placed in that situation before. But here we have the body of Christ. We see mothers, we see volunteers, we see brothers, we have sisters helping them overcome their fear. One of the participants was a dear young friend. Her name is Grace. She deals with a physical condition called spinal bifida. And so she wears a special brace on her leg. And she was up there, and her mother was down, was below the base of the station. And the mother must have been thinking she had no way of jumping.
No way to jump.
But our friend JQ here, he's the national floorball coach of Singapore. He knows little Grace as well. He holds her up in his hands, and he takes the lead with her so that she can experience that. Churches, we need to be inclusive, and we need to restore dignity to the special needs community. And to this, we are doing something as well. I met up with a Brazilian football coach. He has a heart of a father. The young man beside him is a Brazilian as well. He just got flown in from Brazil, cleared quarantine, and is going to be playing for Geylang United. But Fabio here has a son who is 8 years old, who deals with autism. And he has translated his soccer coaching into soccer therapy. And he has given children with special needs hope, teaching them what it means to celebrate in victory when you score a goal. And so, inspired by Life Fest, we are starting a football club for children with special needs. We want to reveal the lion in every gifted child. And I just see in my spirit fields packed with children with special needs. And you have Coach Fabio there instructing the parent volunteers to coach the children. And we have other Christians ministering to the families who is at the fringe of the field because it's just so difficult to take care of a special needs child sometimes. But we want to come alongside them. And to that end, we have also prepared football club jerseys for them, to robe them with a robe of righteousness, robe them with a robe of hope. Now, I know the European Cup is going on right now, and football has a great way of splitting the church sometimes. And so we've made a good color for everyone to be happy about, okay? So the church can stand behind this united together.
And it's our dream, one day we can do Brave Basketball Club, Brave Hockey Club, Brave Floorball Club. That is going to be our dream, that every child with special needs will feel included, and every children's ministry will have a child who is in need, will have a child with special needs.
And so again, Jesus said, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, you will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. There's little point in demystifying Obadiah and Nahum to our congregations if they don't even know what it means to us. We need to be loving as much as we can, all right? And the fifth point is really the advocacy for the right for life. And for that, we want to transit into a time of Q&A right now to answer the questions that you have in Slido. I'm going to hand over the time to Evangeline in a short while. But before I do so, I want to introduce two friends that I brought alongside. They have been advocates for life. One is Timothy Warasikara, all right? Not only is he an advocate for life, he is also himself somewhat a foster father caring for a young child with all his heart. And he is a bold champion for life, speaking out where it counts in the advocacy space, online and offline. The other guy is Daniel Lim. He's going to be answering the questions as well. And he has been speaking up, discipling many young people on how to think and represent the gospel in the social political space, representing the Christian view in these matters, all right? So could you give it up for Tim and Daniel? And please ask them the most difficult questions that you have, because I've yet to see them face a question that they cannot answer. And every time I hope that that happens, so I can give them a hard time after that. And I'm going to hand the time over to Evangeline, who's going to host this time of Q&A.
It's been really a blessing to hear testimony after testimony, as well as all the stats and facts and the biblical worldview. Yeah, and in points in time, I think I've been also moved to tears hearing what has been shared in the landscape of Singapore as well. So I think we'll move on to the Q&A section, and we have got Tim and Daniel to help us with that as well. And I think, looking at the number of questions on Slido, one of the top questions, and I think it's a broader issue as well, relates to, I guess, the question of whether, is a person, entitled to be able to make their own decisions about their bodily autonomy, right? Especially if the abortion, seems justified. And I think, we talk about whether when the mother has certain dangers, right, in pregnancy, right? And what if, let's say, in this instance, there's a clear and immediate danger to the mother's life? How should the mother respond in that situation? Or if you're advising a mother in that situation, what would you say to the mother?
Okay, so Evan, do you want Daniel or myself to take it? Either.
Tim, since you're already talking, you might as well go for it.
Yeah, okay.
I see you're raring to go.
I purposely tapped inside because I actually wanted to answer the question, and the reason why.
Yeah. By all means, please start.
Well, first, let me greet everyone. It's a very, very wonderful evening to see everybody here, and it's so encouraging to see that there was over 100 of us on the call earlier. So praise the Lord for that. Now, my name is Tim. I work closely with Pastor Norman and Debbie and Daniel, and I love children, and that's the reason why I do this. I have good news for you. I really, really have good news for you. Here's the good news. There is zero medical necessity to have an abortion. There are no cases whatsoever, medically speaking, that require the death of a child. And so that's the good news. And the reason why it's good news is because sometimes when we deal in the issue of abortion, good, very, very well-meaning Christians believe that we have to be pro-choice or only like partially pro-life because we have to allow for certain exceptions, like the rape clause or the incest clause, or what if there was a very, very urgent thing for the life of the mother, right? I'm here to tell you that we can be 100% pro-life. We can operate in this spirit without fear of contradiction and without fear of being unloving. Let me explain why. When it comes to medicine and abortion, medicine's intention is to save life, right? Abortion's intention is not to save life. Abortion's intention is to end life. And so when we discover and we describe the idea of medically necessary abortions, we have to know whether the ending of the child's life was ever necessary in the process. I'm here to tell you that it's not. So there are certain instances in which we may have to pre-deliver a child, but pre-delivery of a child doesn't mean that we have to end the life of the child. With neonatal technology that is advancing at a crazy pace, praise the Lord for that. We are seeing earlier and earlier that the technologies that are available are able to help children survive outside of the womb for up to 20 weeks and lower. So that's a fantastic development, and we need to pray into medical technology such that it develops so that we can save children who need to be delivered earlier than necessary. Now, there are certain medical conditions that do require early delivery of the child, right? And then there are some other cases like cancer, chemotherapy, Or what about ectopic pregnancies, right? So I'll answer 3 categories for us. And these 3 categories are enough to handle the whole gamut of issues that moms face, all right? So the first major issue is early delivery. Now, there are 2 major medical conditions that occur late in pregnancy. One is called preeclampsia, and the other one is called placenta previa. Both of these are basically medical complications that require the early delivery of the baby. Now, we can early deliver the baby without needing to kill the baby. Now, the killing of the child in an abortion procedure is gruesome. And I think it's important that we know what it entails, right? So, what happens is there is often an initial scissors that goes in to snip the base of the baby's spine. Um, or there is a saline injection that is done to corrode and early expel the child. There are also clamps that go in and they rip the arms and the legs off of the child. Sometimes without anesthesia, depending on the jurisdiction that this is happening in. So I say this because we need to know what exactly the simple word abortion or choice entails, right? We don't need to kill the child in order to save the life of the mother. We can do both. And that is the life-giving option, my brothers and sisters. So let us never be backed into a corner where people try to tell us, oh, you're unreasonable because you're forcing people to choose between the life of the mother and the child. That's never the case. So praise the Lord for that. And don't take my word for it. I'm just an international relations guy, right? There is something called the Dublin Declaration. You may like to look into that. There is also another group that is the OBGYN from the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Over 2,500 American doctors signed this document. Both these separate groups have affirmed that in all their experience of doing gynecology, I believe that's the word. The word is escaping me right now. Brain fart. But in all their years of working in the field of reproductive health, they have never encountered a case where it requires the death of the child in order to save the mother. Now, that's not to say that sometimes children don't die in these procedures. When we early deliver a child and it's not able to survive outside of the womb, it was given a fighting chance to survive. And that's what matters, right? And so we should never be backed into a corner to validate abortion. Now, that's one. Number 2, cancer treatments. When cancer treatments come about, very often the child is sacrificed in the process because it cannot take the chemotherapy going through the mom's body. This is a very, very unfortunate and very sad fact of life. But again, cancer treatment and chemotherapy are meant to save the life of the mother. They are not an intentional effort to stop the life of the child, to kill the life of the child. And so we must be able to clearly distinguish between these medical treatments to know what is life-saving and what is against the very Hippocratic oath that doctors themselves take. Did you know that the Hippocratic Oath was actually intended originally? It explicitly says that abortion is by no means an okay. But the way the philosophy has developed, the Hippocratic Oath might as well count for nothing anymore, because the way these doctors behave sometimes is just, you say one thing, but then you profess you act a different way. But there's nothing new under the sun, isn't there? And finally, there is the idea of ectopic pregnancies. Now, some people say, oh, you have to have an abortion in order to save the life of the mother during an ectopic pregnancy. Well, again, the abortion is intended to end the life of a child, whereas life-saving procedures that are done to save the life of the mother during ectopic pregnancies, where the baby implants in the fallopian tube and then grows in the fallopian tube, right? If the fallopian tube bursts, that's a life-threatening condition for the mom. And so very often what has to be done from the pro-life stance, right, is we observe to see whether the implantation resolves itself and that the baby moves down the fallopian tube and implants into the uterine wall. If the baby does not do that, then the ectopic pregnancy has to be ended. But that's not considered an abortion. And the reason why it's not considered an abortion is because it is a life-saving procedure instead of a procedure that is intended to end the life of the child. All right. So it's not wordplay. These are very, very specific terms that we are dealing with here. And we have to also know that that child who was implanted in the fallopian tube would never have been viable anyway, because the mom would have passed away if the issue was not resolved. And so those are the three major cases. But that's the good news, guys. If there's only one thing that you walk away with from this, it's this: abortion is never medically necessary. All right? Yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Should I call you Dr. Tim now? It sounded like you you're like a gynecologist who knew so much about the female body and the conditions surrounding pregnancy. I think there is also an ask, if you have the resources that you've kind of quoted from or refer to, if you could kind of maybe put that in the chat as well for some of the participants who have requested for that, Tim. Thank you so much. Yes, and I think, there are also questions and I guess also queries surrounding, issues surrounding, let's say, stillbirths, miscarriages. And, when these things do happen, what does it mean then that, God allows for these things and doesn't have a plan for such unborn children, since, he should have foreseen miscarriages, right? If God is all knowing. What's your perspective on that? And how does it tie back to the fact that, we were talking about pro-life here as well?
Yeah, maybe
Daniel, you want to take that?
Maybe I'll go first this time. So I think that's a very good question. I get that from youth, especially because they always don't see a difference between a life lost through abortion and a life lost through miscarriage. And they will ask questions like, what about miscarriages? What about all the suffering? Yeah, so this really goes back to the question of whether or not the death of a child is through miscarriage is actually God's idea. Yeah, so if we look into the Bible, we will see that actually children are God's gifts to us. It's God's idea. In fact, all of us first existed in God's mind before coming into this material world. So I don't think that God in any way intends for us to die that way. Yeah, but rather why miscarriages happen, because now that we study a little bit more about miscarriages, we understand that some of them happen because genetically the children, the baby themselves are not viable, in the sense that their genes don't allow them to survive through even the early infancy stages. So there will be developmental issues that would cause them to just die off while in the womb. And we know that all these kinds of these kind of problems in our genes is not really God's design, because God's design of us are perfect. But the fall of humanity actually caused a lot of issues in our world today, be it our behavioral issues, be it our choices, be it temptations, but also in our genetic makeup. So a lot of the this also goes back to like, what about deformities? So this goes all hand in hand, that genetic issues, miscarriages, deformities actually all go back to the fall of man. So we cannot blame God for miscarriages, and we definitely cannot be comparing miscarriage, which is not of the choice of the mother or the baby, and abortion, which is actually the choice of adults. Yeah, so this is the distinction that we have to draw between miscarriages, which is a very unfortunate event. And I do believe that God does not intend that to happen to anyone. Yeah. Tim, anything to add?
No, it's a good answer, Dan. Yeah. I would defer to Pastor Norman's theological expertise in this area.
And also being somewhat a couple who has been through the pains of miscarriage, there are some things that we won't be able to understand. We also recognize that there are some things that we will never know until we get to heaven. But we also don't want to underestimate the level of how sin has impacted our bodies, and how that affects even the health of the fetus, and like what Daniel talked about, the viability of the fetus. And so from a theological perspective, we do believe that we have a fourth child in heaven, because the life starts before conception in the imagination of God in the heart of the Father. But physically, it's a similar reason to why there's suffering, to why there is to why cancer. It's not something that we can understand, but we do recognize that in such cases, we hold on to the promises that all things work together for the good of them who love God.
Thanks, Pastor Norman. We did talk also a little bit about the various alternatives, right, to abortion, and rightly so, because it's not going to be a single issue. It's really an ecosystem, and it's not about pitting one right against another, right? We're talking about a pro-life ecosystem where everyone helps to chip in that sense. And then we talked about fostering and adoption. If let's say someone is confused as to whether it is right to be able to give up a child for adoption and fostering, is there a theological basis for that? I mean, and how would you convince that person around the issue of adoption or fostering?
Can you clarify that question? So if somebody wants to
is it wrong, in other words, to give up a child for adoption or fostering because you're kind of maybe abandoning the child or something along those lines? So I suppose, what would you do to convince a person, right, who's thinking about it, right, to consider adoption or fostering?
Yeah, okay, I hear you.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just go first for this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a very tough choice because some people see giving up children for adoption as abandoning, and they don't want to put a child through a life of suffering, like knowing that the parents abandoned them and stuff like this. So they say that it's better for the child to never be born. So they rather choose the option of abortion rather than putting the child up for adoption or fostering. Yeah, so that is the line of thought that many of them suggest. And this kind of thinking is not too uncommon, especially among the youths, because they seem to think that it might even be better to not have children at all for the sake of environment. Yeah, so they believe things like this. They believe that there's a greater good kind of thing. That's why keeping children, especially unwanted ones, isn't a responsible thing to do. But right here, we need to consider the two options. One of them is immediate murder. The other is not ideal for sure. I think we have to acknowledge that it's not the best of the worlds, but at least the child is still brought to life, and the child has a shot at life. Yeah. So the issue is whether or not the adoptive family and the fostering family is able to provide well for the child. And there are many other details that needs to be sorted out. So all these things are very difficult to say. Yeah, so there's a lot of things, a lot of counseling, a lot of discussions involved before someone can say that, okay, I'm ready, I'm willing to let my child be born and then be put up for adoption. Yeah, because there are a lot of legal things behind adoption. Yeah, so they need to be comfortable with it. They need to understand what it entails, and they need to also explore whether or not they are able to have the child and keep the child within their own family. They need to look at all these options. So this is not an easy decision to make for sure, but to choose between adoption or abortion, I think it's pretty clear, because if you want to be pro-life, then keeping the child is the first step. Yeah. After that, providing for the child will come next, which is all the things, the other options like fostering and adoption. Yeah. Tim, anything?
Yeah, definitely.
Can I just jump into Daniel's point as well? I was just working with a lot of fostering and adoption agencies, and I couldn't agree more with Daniel. If we're given two choices, one is to end the life of the child. Second is to actually give this child out for fostering or adoption. I think really choosing to murder a child, for lack of a better word, is as blatant as that. And I think we need to also acknowledge that sometimes the bravest thing a mom can do is to carry the child all the way, but know that the child is going to a family that will really care and love for the child, versus taking the decision to end the life of the child at a point of pregnancy. And I think this is a stigma sometimes in society where, because I'm a single mom, for example, I choose to keep this child, everybody's like, oh, you're so irresponsible, you give this child up. I was just interviewing a mother about a month ago, and she's a single mom, and she had to give up her child for fostering for 2 months. Because she was trying her best to work her job. She has night shifts at 7-Eleven, and so she needed a 2 months break so that she could continue working at 7-Eleven, because they were only giving her night shifts, but at the same time find another job that could give her day shifts. And so she needed that help. for 2 months. But does that mean that she's an irresponsible mother? No. In fact, she's the most responsible mother because she wanted so much to bring her child back that she needed to make sure she gets a 9-to-5 job and not one that works night shifts. So really, I think, the awareness of fostering and adoption, how stringent the criteria is. And, even as we do the 100 homes work, if more Christian families were to open our homes and says, let us help you care for your child while you are in transition, or let us, come alongside you and journey with you, that would make the pro-life work in that sense a lot more complete rather than stop at, oh, because I cannot care for this child, I'm irresponsible and therefore I will choose to abort. So I would say really there are a lot of community help within the church that is necessary to make the decision of keeping a child so much easier in that sense. It's not easy still, but it's easier to know that there is support, because after speaking to so many women who have gone through an abortion, if you ask them the question, if you minus away all the external factors on, mother will kick me out, I have no money, I have no community, will you want to keep the child? And 9 out of 10 of them will say, yes, I want to keep this child if I had all the support I needed. And so I want to just add on, to what Daniel was saying, is that fostering an adoption should not be seen as something irresponsible, but rather versus an adoption, it's a solution to have a child live the life that God has planned for them.
I want to add to Debbie's thing, and I'll make it short and sharp, I hope. We answered the obvious earlier, right? Which was between the two, death and adoption. Obviously, adoption is preferable. But I think one of the nuances that I got from Sister Evangeline's question was, if it was a choice between keeping the child and then letting the child out for adoption, which would be the preferable choice? Now, this one is so. It's such a deep one because it involves people's emotions and their sense of whether they were responsible, whether they failed. I want to say that there is no more disempowering narrative than to say, oh, you're in a tough situation, no choice lah, have to give up for adoption. I think that the spirit of reconciliation that Christ has given to us in the world, the idea of what it means to be a redemptive community, right? It comes to play now, you see. And how does it come to play? It is exactly what Sister Debbie said, right? When the mom is faced in a catch-22 situation between a rock and a hard place, does she receive the love and support from the church that says, keep the child, it's going to be difficult, but we will walk with you every step of the way? Don't just give your child up for adoption as a first order of business, because it's not so much about the child. The child's life is enriched not by the amount of tuition they will get or whether they can do piano lessons. It's whether they will be in a family that loves them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, right, if a family that lives modestly is able to love their children and prioritizes having children and understanding that there's a gift from the Lord, because we have developed a culture that says, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a child, that's amazing, then we will never have to resort to adoptions, you see. So adoptions God is not anti-adoption. God has given us the spirit of adoption. But between keeping the child and letting the child have a family through adoption, I would urge somebody and say, you can be strong. You can keep the child, and I will support you in that journey. And so it will require sacrifice. It may require putting off the dreams that we have for ourselves, the dreams to finish my degree or to get that job or to move to London or whatever it may have been. But it would have been a sacrifice that was worth taking, because the child would have been planted in their own biological family. And that, I think, has no real substitute. There's nothing that is, it's second to nothing lah. Yeah, okay, thanks, Evangeline.
Amen. Thanks, Tim. If I could just add on as well, when it comes to that, there is also another school of thought on the rights of a child, and that the child is due the right to be raised by their biological father and mother. Now, as far as possible, that should be the case. In fact, it is also enshrined in such a language in the UN's statement on the rights of a child. But if that is for one reason or the other, and let's go to a commonly asked question in the case of rape as well. Do we expect the victim of rape to bear the pregnancy and then raise the child and then embracing the child as her own? And say the child, let's say the lady is able to embrace the pregnancy, but is not able to keep the child because of the trauma of the rape. So what does that, at that point in time, adoption and fostering can come in. And as a Christian community, we have to be the ones to represent that heart the most. For we are the ones who receive the spirit of adoption by which we cry, Abba, Father. We have to be the one to be able to model that as well. And when it comes to a case of whether, in the case, should I bear the child and raise him up for give him up for adoption, or to abort the child, like what Daniel mentioned earlier. There's a verse in Deuteronomy 30 that says, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live." The Lord calls us to choose life and to be as a sacrificial community of faith, to do so for one another. The unfortunate thing is, in our modern day First World Church, that sacrificial community of faith isn't as evident as what it was in the Acts Church. But I believe the Lord is moving us into that space again. Like what Brother Tim said, we would make sacrifices for the long-term benefit of others who have lesser, who are in a more unfortunate situation. Evangeline?
Thank you so much for that very comprehensive answer. And yes, I think that addressed various nuances and aspects of that question. I think we're going to change tact a little bit on the questions, because we've dealt a lot on the ethical considerations and the theological aspects. I do think that we do need to kind of ask a couple of questions, and there are also a couple of questions on Slido regarding the role of the church and, you know, shaping the laws and the beliefs of our land. And for that, I'm going to ask Bernice to ask a couple of the questions that have been put up on Slido as well.
Sure, thanks Evangeline, and thanks Pastor Norman, Tim and Daniel for joining us today. So one of the questions has been posted in the Slido and that I had as well was kind of, what do you see as the role of the church in shaping legislation? So Pastor Debbie kind of mentioned that Singapore is, you know, is one of the 7 countries in the world that has one of the most liberal abortion laws. And I think a lot of the calls to action were more centered around giving social support and emotional support to women of unwanted pregnancies. So just curious as to if you think that abortion should necessarily be in our law and banning it. And if so, why should we advocate it for it to be in our law? Because there are many things that the Bible or the church views as sinful. You know, we could think of like premarital sex as sinful, but we're not necessarily advocating for it to be in the law. So kind of curious on your take on that.
Let me take this one. Thank you, Bernice. Guys, I want us to reframe the way we think about abortion from today onwards. Abortion is not an option that anybody should be allowed to have. And here's the reason why. It is the killing of an innocent human life. And there are 0 cases in which the killing of an innocent human life is valid. It is unethical by any standard of measure. The life of the child in the womb is worth the same as somebody who is born. There is nothing that is different. Biologically, the child is fully human. When it is dependent in the womb, guess what? A 2-year-old toddler is equally dependent on the mother. So none of these things, the location of the child outside the womb or inside the womb, doesn't change the worth of the human life. When a mother who is pregnant gets knocked down by a vehicle and then the mother dies and the child dies, guess what? It's a double homicide. Our legal system is actually quite consistent to a degree when it recognizes the worth of the child in the womb. Ethically, when we examine these things, we understand that the worth of the child in the womb is the same as well. So when we say, oh, should the church impose our views on the rest of society, we should ask, what are we imposing? Are we imposing a subjective view, or are we living in a situation now where it was very much like the conversation that I believe it was Jesus who had that conversation about divorce, right? And he said, you know, Moses allowed you to have divorce because of your hardened hearts. And so abortion today is a solution to the hardened hearts of men, where there are no avenues for recourse. But here is the role of the church. The role of the church is to make abortion not only unnecessary, but to make it unthinkable. All right, let me say that again. The role of the church today is to make abortion unnecessary and also unthinkable. What do I mean by that? How do we make abortion unnecessary? We need to make sure that we are on the front lines of the adoption narrative, the fostering narrative, the care for crisis pregnancies narrative, when there is a unsupported pregnancy or a mom who's struggling with her kids, and then the narrative develops in society. Oh, children are such a liability. Oh, it's so leceh to take care of children. We need to be the people on the front line to say that's absolutely ridiculous and a twisted way to talk about children. Children are lovely to be loved, and they are a gift from the Lord. And so we need to reframe in our hearts and our minds, right? What is the value of children to us? Number one. Number two, do we show that in our actions such that abortion in this nation can be unnecessary, right? Because there is always more than enough support to adopt and to foster, right? And then from there, we need to change the ethos of the land to say, hey, can we make it unthinkable that how can we dismantle a human life in the womb? You know, that is really barbarism at its top notch, right? But we do so in a way that is tactful, that is loving, that doesn't put people off. This cultural shift will take years to achieve. But unless we start today by getting our own heads in order and discipling our own minds away from pro-choice rhetoric to the way God sees things, right, we're going to have a hard time swimming upstream. And so I would say this, is it my personal desire that abortion be made illegal in Singapore? Yes. Is that the thing that I am working hand and tooth for right now? Tooth and nail for hand and tooth. Tooth and nail for right now? No. Because my primary mission right now is to build a culture where abortion is unnecessary and unthinkable. And the laws will flow from the culture. Politics is always a child of culture. And so when we change culture, eventually the laws will follow. And so we need to be a part of the solution from the cultural front. Okay.
Okay, great. No, thanks so much for that, Tim. So I think to a follow-on question to what you mentioned in terms of shaping the culture, we have a question that asks, can we talk about abortion and avoid a culture war, or is it inevitable? So I guess the question also comes from, as you mentioned, that being pro-life is a very unpopular opinion now, and kind of and I think the central issue is more of this debate over where exactly does life begin, right? As Christians, we believe that life begins even before conception, but oftentimes the world doesn't. So, how can believe, and if this audience is like mainly Christians, we're kind of like preaching to the choir, everyone agrees that, okay, abortion is bad. How can we advocate against it? But once we leave this, how can we go out and kind of share this view of this culture of life in a loving way, in a convincing way, without necessarily only appealing to the Bible?
Then?
Sure, yeah. I think this is something very interesting because as a Chinese myself, there's a Chinese saying when it comes to very unfortunate situations where a pregnant lady gets into an accident and then she perishes. So the Chinese phrase is 一尸两命. So it basically translates to one time you lose two lives. Yeah. So in the Chinese culture, we have a phrase that describes a pregnant lady as carrying two lives, not one. Yeah. So even in ancient Chinese culture, we understand that whoever is pregnant with a human life inside. Yeah, we don't talk about it as a clump of cells. That is a very modern way of looking at an unborn child. Yeah, and the thing is this, I have read certain articles and people saying things like, oh, if we say that a zygote or a zygote or like this blastocyst, a single like tiny dot of cell is equivalent to a human, then my piece of iron on the floor is a car because it's made of the same thing. I've seen arguments like this, but it doesn't quite be the same thing because an iron, a bar of iron on itself will never be transformed into a car on its own. But if you let a blastocyst just be on its own and like leave it in the womb, don't touch it, it's going to be a human in 9 months. Yeah, so there's a very distinct difference between comparing lifeless and something that will never transform into a car, comparing that with a cell that has the potential to become a full human. And this is why even without bringing in Bible teachings on this topic, we can very easily show that a cell, a blastocyst, is going to become a human, and therefore it is a human life. Yeah, so coming from this perspective, it is possible to explain without using the referring to the Bible, why a fetus is actually a human, yeah, and therefore deserving of protection. Yeah, but as to beyond that, of course, there's a lot more things to explain, which is why to make it unthinkable is pretty much the first part of it is to make the other options way more attractive. Yeah, that's why earlier on you have heard from Pastor Norman, Debbie, and Tim as well, that you really need to work on that as a church. We really have to do that. And also, I think that one more dimension is to really let people know what's the point of marriages. Yeah, so this is also not necessarily just a church thing, but also a societal thing. If society as a whole sees marriages as a contract, as something that how to say, makes yourself happy. Yeah, something whereby two people get together because there are common interests, because there's strong passions of love. If we are down that track, then it's very dangerous, because this family, which is supposed to be the core context for having children, is so weak. Then we are going to see having children as a problem. Yeah, and this is why we also need to work on the larger picture, which is what does marriage mean to us as people, as a society. Yeah, so I would say that it has to go all the way upstream, even to dating, to ideas of marriage, because until we let people understand that marriages and families are really not for yourself, but actually for the next generation, then they will start to see this issue of children and abortion in a very different way. Yeah, so that's something that I wanted to share.
I think from my end, let me give you a few handles for those of you who want to be able to answer this question. Here are two things that you want to jot down and then Google or YouTube these things, okay? Because there's so much pro-life content on YouTube. Number one is you want to jot down, trot out your toddler. T-R-O-T, trot out your toddler. Now, this is a rhetorical technique, or it's a conversational technique that helps people who you are conversing with see that the life of the child outside of the womb is the exact same thing as the life of the child inside the womb. So trot out your toddler is the first one. The second one is SLED, SLED, right? SLED refers to the size of the child. L is the location of the child. E is the sorry. L is not location. L is level of development. E is environment, which is the location of the child. And D is the degree of dependency. Now, I won't go through all of this because all of this is very easy to understand when you just watch one or two YouTube videos. All right. You just have to type this in, type pro-life SLED. There's going to be so much content there for you. Now, I want to touch on the earlier question. Brother Daniel spoke about the idea of when does a life begin and how do we convince people of that, right? So these are two tools that you may like to use in your conversations when you are trying to convince somebody that the child in the womb is alive, right? I mean, another one is you can just say like, oh, when your friend comes to you and says, hey, I'm pregnant, right? We don't ever ask our friend, is it a clump of cells or is it alive? Of course we know it's alive, and of course we know it's not a clump of cells. The question that we ask them is it a boy or a girl, right? Or we say congratulations because we know that it's valuable. And so intuitively, we understand that what's in the womb is alive and it's a human and it's a child. But we often tell ourselves these stories, or we construct for ourselves these caveats or these cop-outs or these get-out clauses, right? And then we convince ourselves that black is white, white is black, and that what is in the womb is not alive and is dispensable. So that aside, I wanted to, from the way I speak, I think many of you can gather that I am not the meek and mild sort. I am the follower of Jesus, who sought to bring a sword and not just peace. And I think that when it comes to the culture wars, right, my friends, we are peacemaking people, and we seek to bring life and we seek to bring redemption into every situation. And very often people are pro-choice because what they want is the life of the mother and the priorities of the mother to be elevated above those of the child, right? That's a whole other conversation in there. But for most reasonable pro-choice people, if we are able to assure them, look, we care for moms as well, and we want moms to be able to live fulfilling lives and to have their dreams and aspirations achieved. Very often, most pro-choice people, they'll kind of come around because they see that we are not just myopically focused on the child at the expense of the mother. And so that's one really important thing that we need to understand as believers, is that we don't sacrifice women's interests or mom's interests in the whole rhetorical space, right? But at the same time, at some points in a conversation with somebody, you're going to run into a person who is ideologically pro-life because they are not inhabited by the Spirit of Christ. And he who seeks to steal, kill, and destroy very often influences these people's mindsets and their behaviors. What then do we do? In such a case, my friends, sometimes it is unavoidable that you will encounter a culture war, you will encounter people who vehemently disagree with you, and you need to be sure of the footing on which you stand. And you need to be courageous enough to say, hey, you know what, if this conversation is going to be a protracted one, I will continue to speak lovingly and gently, but I am not going to renege on the convictions of being pro-life, because this is a matter of life and death for those who cannot fight for themselves. And so for that reason, my friends, I would say when it comes to the culture war, and if it really has to come to that, then believers who know what is on the mind of God and what's on the heart of God should say to the culture war, bring it on. Because we are not going to get anywhere by being a bunch of cowards who back down ever so quickly. All right. I see Pastor Benny Ho in our midst today, and I watched this really short, like 3 to 5 minute video of him talking about a law that was changed in Victoria, and he's in Perth, but it has the potential to affect him as a pastor in Perth. And in such an incredible, winsome way, he basically said, Christians, batten down the hatches because the storm is coming, and be ready to stand for what you believe in. In not so many words, okay? This guy is a champion, all right? And Pastor Benny, I just want to say a greeting to you. Thank you for being such a leader in the field. Really, you're an inspiration. Yeah.
Thank you. Very kind of you to say that.
Thanks, Tim. And thanks, Pastor Benny. So I think we have come to, I know this topic we can go on forever, and it is a very interesting topic with many, many questions. And I'm sorry we haven't been able to obviously answer every single one of the questions. But I hope that tonight's session has given you enough fodder to think about. And I'm going to hand the time back to Pastor Norman and Debbie, who's going to make some concluding remarks. And Pastor Norman and Debbie, please.
Thanks, Evangeline. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Daniel. Can we give them a big hand, please? Really appreciate you guys. I just want to touch on two questions very quickly. One is the follow-up question by Mingju, and I just felt very pastorally that we have to address that. Mingju, the heart behind what Tim was saying is that in such a case of a medical emergency, the attempt to save both is a priority. And an abortion is not necessary because what is needed is a medical intervention. Now, if ever there was a case where both lives are at stake, the Bible doesn't state which life is more valuable than the other. Like what Tim very eloquently said, that both lives are just as equal. And the Lord gives us the liberty in that situation to have to make that choice. And that liberty comes with that free will. But as Tim said as well, it is extremely rare for such situations to take place. And also, as part of the culture, what sometimes we like to think, and I don't think this is the best way of thinking, but some people would say that, the child would go to heaven. And that's, I believe that that's a lie, that we always think that that's an easy way out, that the child will automatically go to heaven. The other way to think about it is that the child has a long life ahead of him as well. But to which angle, it's between us and the Lord gives us that position. He gives us that liberty to be able to choose. Now, the other question very quickly is the question of contraceptive. What my wife and I learned quite late in our married life is that there are type of contraceptives that are abortive in nature. And it's important for you, before you choose which contraceptive to adopt, to talk to your doctor and understand which contraceptive are abortive in nature, because you don't want to be aborting kids without even your knowledge. And so that's important for you to find out from the doctor. All right. Thank you for the honest questions. Really appreciate the participation. We thought we wrap up today very quickly on what are some of the key things that you can do. All right. So take this down. Just a very simple framework called head, heart, and hands. All right.
All right. So I know it's late, so thank you for staying with us. Just give me a couple of minutes as I wrap things up. Really, after hearing so much knowledge, we want to also tell you how you can take action. What can you actually do out of today's conversation? And very quickly, I think the first thing is head. So will you be a voice for the voiceless? You heard Tim, you heard Daniel. You know, they are a team of advocates that have come together with us and really speak up for life. And, you know, you can do it with us on a platform like this. You can speak about this conversation in your community as well. Start with your family, your children, your church, your children's ministry, your cell group, your friends. Be equipped, you know, continue in this conversation. Go into the material that Tim and Daniel have shared. And go in and start that conversation with us, that more and more people will really understand what is the Lord's heart on this conversation. If you are garang like Tim and Daniel and you want to join us in being a louder voice, whether is it, you know, on social media, whether it's on platforms like this, please contact us. We will be happy to connect with you. Definitely join us and speak for Unplanned as well. It is the movie that SMICS is having. When you watch it, I tell you, entire perception on life and abortion will change. Okay, you can scan the QR code there, watch the Unplanned movie. It is based off a true story of this lady in the US and her entire story on being in an abortion situation, working for an abortion clinic, and how her life turned around.
SMICS is available, Unplanned is available on SMICS. Pastors and leaders, one of the best ways you can do and talk about the issue of life and abortion in your churches is to organize a watch party, and then after that have a time of discussion on the movie after that. I guarantee you this will bring the heart of the matter to the surface and form strong convictions among your people.
Before I forget, just a quick one. So if there are any doctors in the midst, or if you know any medical practitioners who might be interested in this conversation, we have started Doctors for Life, and we want to bring in the medical professionals in, because often the doctors, the gynecologists, the GPs, they are the gateway, because many times we will basically go with whatever the doctor recommends. And just look at the stories here that I'm showing you, and just very quickly, 4 out of 5 of the stories that we've shared, the doctors had recommended an abortion, but all of them kept their children. And you know what? All of them are in beautiful families now. Only one doctor, which is Mark and Sarah, who said, get married, you know, consider marrying this guy. So really, doctors stand at the gateway of life and abortion. If you know someone, a nurse, a medical practitioner, an OBGYN, please connect them with us. If you are a young person here and you are on fire for the life issue, please connect us. We will connect you with Tim and Daniel and be a part of Students for Life. We want to go into the campuses. If you heard earlier, 2 out of 3 young Christians are saying that abortion is not wrong. Come on, we got to do something in the campuses. All right, very quickly on the heart. Now, this is going to be very personal. The heart really deals with your personal issues. If you are today single but in a physically intimate relationship, or you are married even, know and recognize that consent to sex is consent to pregnancy. We had one of these sharings, and a girl who was single then came up to me after that and said, you know what, I'm going to speak to my boyfriend and we're going to stop having premarital sex, because I realized that I might just get pregnant and I don't want to find myself in a situation of an abortion. And she recognized that. So if you are in a situation like that, where you know you don't want to get pregnant, or you know, just recognize consent to sex is consent to pregnancy. If you know a friend who needs this message, a friend of ours 6 years ago had an abortion, didn't know where to go. We didn't know because we were not in the work of life as well. And he said, you know, if I knew, I would have told my girlfriend otherwise. I would have supported her. I would have told her we can keep this baby. If you know someone who needs this message, please reach out to them. Reach out to us. We would love to journey with them. If you know someone who had an abortion, maybe it's you, maybe it's the father of the child, the mother of the child, whoever that person may be, seek healing and restoration, reach out to June as well and the Buttons Project, okay? this is a story that Norm had shared earlier on Mark and Sarah, Inez, and how when you walk with a friend, what you say can really bring life into the entire situation. Go on Heartbeat Project, check out the stories. I want to encourage you, if your friend says to you, help, I'm pregnant, or help, I had an abortion, I want to leave you with LIFE, speak life. Listen to your friend, do not judge. Okay, the first thing, don't judge. Don't say, I told you, this guy not good one. Or don't say, why you like that? Why you get your friend pregnant? Listen, listen, listen. All right. Second, intercede and pray. Intercede and pray, because really it's not by might nor by power, but by the Holy Spirit. The Lord will work in their hearts. Be a friend. And what does that mean? If your friend is pregnant, right, and she's thinking of aborting, tell her, hey, I'm gonna come and spend time with you. I'll accompany you to the doctor. You know, I will make healthy meals for you. Be a friend. Last but not least, there is external help available. You may feel unequipped. It's okay. There is an entire community that is there to help. External help is available. Come to the Heartbeat Project. Go to Safe Place. Go to Buttons. There is an entire community, and all our partners are on our website as well. Know that this journey is long and you don't have to walk with it alone or with your friend alone. There is a community who is here to help. Last but not least, take action with your hands. Come and volunteer. Help women with unsupported pregnancies. Safe Place is always looking for volunteers. Care for children in need. Come and find out more in the fostering session that we had spoken about, and I'll share with you the QR code in a while. Be a prayer intercessor. If you feel that you cannot do anything, at least you can pray. As a body of Christ, we can come together and pray. All right. We meet every second Wednesday of the month at 12 o'clock, where we pray for children in need and the fostering situation. We have another one at the fourth Wednesday of every month in the evening, where we pray for a culture of life in Singapore. You can come and join us and pray. Pray that a culture of life will come to pass in Singapore. So really, there's much that can be done, from heads, hands, and heart. You could journey with someone, put your hands to the plow, help a child in need, help a woman in need, or, you know, simply speak up for that issue and be an advocate for life.
So just to wrap up, I just want to bless you with Jeremiah 1:6 as we close this time. Look, if you have any other questions, feel free to write to us at hello@Heartbeat Project. And of course, if you want us to come to your community to share, we'll be happy to do so for your ministry and for your church. I just want to, even as we just close this time in prayer, and Sherman would have some announcements. I just want to read this word over you and pray for you together. All right, Father, we thank you for everyone that you have brought here today. Lord, thank you for the revelation that you have given. And as you said in Jeremiah 1, that you knew us before you formed us. You also said, God, and I declare this over everyone. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Lord, I pray you send them people who are struggling with unplanned pregnancies. Father, I pray that you give them an opportunity to foster, to adopt, that we together can choose life, that we can choose life, that by this, all men will know that we are your disciples. Bless everyone here. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.